Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. HDM here with a Greymoor PTS patch note update. Here we are sitting at week 1, patch 6.0.0, and I'm ready to discuss these patch note changes with you guys and kind of break it down. Now the amount of changes that we have here is absolutely huge, so I will be skipping through a few things, and then my goal is also to put timestamps below so you can jump to the section that you want to see. Major topics though that we'll be talking about obviously is the vampire and werewolf changes. We'll be looking at the new item sets, talking about Antiquities, going over any class-specific changes. And there's also a huge section of changes to things like monster helms, the VMA weapons, and Dragonstar Arena weapons. So as far as those item set changes, stay tuned for a second video. I will have a part 2 coming out shortly to cover all of those changes in detail because that section is just so long and I don't want to make this initial video any longer than it needs to be. And we're going to start talking about Antiquities. This is the new system that allows you to scour all of Tamriel for lost relics and treasures. So there will be 2 new skill lines to check out on the PTS this week. And the new Antiquarian's Eye tool, this obviously gives us access to new items, new furnishings, a new mount. I believe there's also a new siege weapon for PvP, so we'll check those out in a minute. But if you want to get into this on the PTS, you're going to go to Solitude in Western Skyrim, grab the Antiquarian's Eye and get the new skills, and then start looking for those Antiquities. So like we said, this includes mythic items. So we have Bloodlord's Embrace, which is a heavy chest. You have Malakath's Band of Brutality, a ring. Another ring of the Wild Hunt. We have Snow Treaders, which is medium feet. A Torque of Tonal Constancy, which is a neck piece. And then Thracian Stranglers, light hands. Now note that these are all across Tamriel. So like the Malakath's Band, this requires the Orsinium DLC. Ring of the Wild Hunt, this is from Murkmire. The Stranglers, you're going to need Somerset. So this does cover pretty much all of the zones, including DLCs and chapter zones, so keep that in mind. Here we have a new mount called the Dwarven Ebon Wolf mount. This is split into 17 fragments found throughout the base game and Western Skyrim. 17 pieces you need to collect for the new mount. We have new motifs, new furnishing, new cosmetics, a music box. Then the siege weapon that we mentioned is called the Magicka Lance. Available in fire, ice, and shock varieties. New emote, treasures, and highly impressive furnishing. So that sounds pretty cool. I'm not going to talk very much about the new trial. It is a full trial, 12-player trial, located in Western Skyrim. So let's go ahead and jump in right to the new item sets. So there's going to be Overland, Crafted, and Trial sets. So starting with the Overland set, Winter's Respite, which is a light armor set. So you have Magicka Recovery, 2 pieces of Max Magicka, and then on the 5-piece bonus, casting abilities that leave an effect on the ground creates a circle of healing frost for 10 seconds, about 2, 3, 5, 8 health every 1 second while inside the circle, and it can occur once every 10 seconds. Okay, so it's a light armor healing set. Venomous Smite, this is the medium overland set. Weapon critical, weapon damage. And then for the 5-piece, dealing critical damage inflicts Hunter's Venom on your enemy for about 2,000 poison damage every 1 second. This effect can occur every 15 seconds. So I feel like there's something missing here. It's not telling me how long the effect lasts. So I'll need to actually get in there and check that out. But that does sound interesting, about 2k poison damage every 1 second when you do critical damage. Then Eternal Vigor, this is our heavy armor overland set. Magicka Stamina Health Recovery. Max health on the 5-piece, and also adds 337 stamina and Magicka recovery while your health is above 50%. Adds 1,000 health recovery while your health is 50% or less. Okay, so that's an extremely strong health recovery bonus, and that's going to get bumped up by our buffs too, like potions, champion points. So that's quite a lot of health recovery. Pretty interesting set. Let's check out crafted sets. Stoon's Favor, weapon damage, spell damage, physical spell penetration, weapon spell damage. So this is for both stamina and Magicka builds. Increase your physical and spell penetration by 13,355 against off-balance enemies. Wow, that's huge. That's a really big buff to penetration. So that's interesting. I see this more of almost maybe a PvP set. So that's going to be interesting to see how that factors into some builds for sure. Dragon's Appetite, we have weapon damage, 2 stamina recovery bonuses, and then increases your damage done to bleeding enemies by 225. So I'm assuming that's all sources of damage. Dealing non-bleed damage to bleeding enemies generates a stack. 1 stack per second. After 10 stacks, you consume the buff and heal for 6,000 health. So that's pretty cool. Basically another bleed set. And then Spell Parasite. This looks to be like a Magicka focus set. So spell damage, spell critical, max Magicka, and then for the 5-piece, whenever you deal damage, restore 63 Magicka. This effect can occur every 0.25 seconds. So that's basically 4 procs per second. So what is that? About 250 Magicka back every 1 second. Okay, that's not bad. That's pretty decent for a sustain if you need a sustain set. Then checking out the new trial sets. Roaring Opportunist. This is classified as Magicka DPS. So spell penetration, minor slayer, spell damage. There's a perfected version which adds a bonus max Magicka. And then for the 5-piece, when you deal damage with a fully charged heavy attack to an enemy that's already been set off balance, you and up to 11 group members get the Major Slayer buff. So that's the 15% bonus damage for 10 seconds. And this can affect only every 22 seconds. So there's a cooldown on that. Interesting. That's a fairly easy way to proc Major Slayer. So that's for Magicka DPS. Let's check out the Stam DPS set. Yandir's Might, 129 weapon damage, minor slayer at all times. Stam recovery, physical penetration on the perfected version. And then for the 5-piece, dealing critical damage grants you a stack of Giant's Endurance, up to 1 per second. Each stack adds 100 stamina recovery, up to 5 stacks. Then dealing damage with a fully charged heavy attack removes the buff and grants you Giant's Might for 10 seconds, increasing your weapon damage by 158 per stack removed. You cannot have Giant's Endurance and Might active at the same time. Interesting. Okay, so not only do we have a stacking mechanic, you stack it up and then release it to increase your weapon damage. That's pretty cool, actually. So you charge up stacks to increase your stamina recovery, but then you can release it with a heavy attack to increase your weapon damage. That's pretty interesting. I kind of like that concept. Then Kind's Wind is the healing set. Magicka recovery, minor Aegis at all times, 4% healing done, Magicka recovery on the perfected version, 5-piece, casting an ability or drinking a potion that applies a major buff on yourself or on an ally, creates a pool of Kind's Blessing for 4 seconds. You and your ally standing in the pool restore 508 stamina and Magicka every 1 second. This effect can occur every 10 seconds, so it has a 6-second cooldown. All right, so a sustain set, 508 stamina and Magicka every 1 second. That's pretty strong, pretty good sustain. Okay, and then there's a set for tanking, Vral's Command. We got max stamina, minor Aegis, max health, 4% healing taken on the perfected version. And then after dealing damage with, again, fully charged heavy attack, apply major Aegis to you and up to 5 nearby group members for 10 seconds. That reduces your damage taken by 15%. This effect can happen every 28 seconds. Okay, so that's the tank set. All right, now we're getting into the mythic items. This is what I really wanted to see. Bloodlord's Embrace. This is a heavy chest piece. Dealing damage with a bash attack places a persistent uncleansable blood curse on an enemy. Oh, it's uncleansable, wow. You can only have 1 blood curse enemy at a time, and dealing additional bash damage moves the blood curse. So apparently you can move the curse between targets. Now blocking an attack from the cursed enemy restores 685 Magicka to you. This can occur every 1 second. Wow. That's a lot of Magicka sustain just by blocking. That's pretty cool. We've got the Thracian Stranglers, which is light gloves. Killing an enemy grants you a persistent stack of Slowed's Call, up to 20 stacks. Each stack increases your spell damage by 150, but also increases your damage taken by 2%. Wow, 150 times 20 stacks. Is that right? So you can increase your spell damage by up to 3,000 with this item? but also increases your damage taken by 2%. So 2% times 20, 40% increased damage. That's quite a lot. Removing the stranglers, crouching, or going invisible removes all stacks. So this is not going to work for bomb builds, but potentially maybe for grinding through dungeons. That's just so much spell damage. Can't believe that. Okay. Snow Treaders, medium feet. You are immune to snares and immobilizations that can be cleansed. Okay. While in combat, you cannot sprint. Wow. I wonder if that would be worth it for PvP. You cannot sprint at all. Ring of the Wild Hunt. Remember, some of these were from DLC zones. I believe this is from Murkmire. Increases your movement speed by 15% while in combat. That's huge. Increases your movement speed by 45% while out of combat. Wow. So if you want to farm those nodes, check out that Ring of the Wild Hunt. That's pretty fast. Malakast Band of Brutality. This is another ring. Increases your damage done by 25%, but you cannot deal critical damage. Wow. This one. I want this one. That's super strong, especially in PvP. Wow, you guys. I don't know. That seems like a lot of increased damage done to me. What do you guys think? Then the last one, Torque of Tonal Constancy, which is a necklace. While your stamina is less than 50%, increase your magicka recovery by 450. While your magicka is less than 50%, increase your stamina recovery by 450. Okay, cool. I like those. I think they're interesting effects, but some of them sound very, very strong. So we'll have to see, especially in PvP, if any sort of limitations or balance come to those effects, because they look pretty good. Now, there are new titles, new furnishings, new motifs. I'm going to skip over that, but I did want to mention, you guys, that there is new alchemy and new enchanting. So there's 3 new reagents for alchemy, and then they're adding a new debuff. So it's called timidity. It's the opposite trait of heroism. So it's a debuff that consumes the target's ultimate points while in combat. And then on the enchanting side, they also added a new essence rune, and that's going to give us 2 new glyphs. So prismatic recovery, which I'm guessing is stam, magicka, and health recovery, and then reduce skill cost. So previously we've had reduced stamina cost, reduced magicka cost. I'm guessing this is just reduces the cost of both. All right, so next up is the vampire updates, and most of you are familiar with these changes. There's been several videos put out about this. I do want to dive into more detail with this, so my goal is to have a video up on the vampire changes by tomorrow, just to show you what those animations and what those tooltips look like on the PTS right now. So as soon as I'm done with this, as soon as the PTS is up, I'll start working on that next. But just to give you kind of the general overview, there's basically been a huge rework to the vampire skill line. New icons, new effects. Feeding now increases your vampire stage instead of decreasing it. Each vampire stage lasts for 4 hours. Similar to before, each stage can unlock new passives. They also decrease the cost of your vampire abilities, but there's penalties, right? Same as before. So it decreases your health recovery, increases your damage taken from flame, and increases the cost of your non-vampire abilities the higher stage you are. Feed now comes with new animations. Some vampire abilities are now classified as criminal acts. So you will get killed on sight from guards if that happens. Most merchants in the game will refuse to deal with you if you are a stage 4 vampire, though you may be able to convince them otherwise. That's pretty cool. Now, in terms of what's changed, let's just hit the highlights here. Drain Essence was changed to Eviscerate. Mistform is now a toggle ability. Drains your magicka every second while it's toggled on. It's still a channel. Reduces your damage taken, gives you immunity to snares and immobilization still. Elusive Mist is still there, right? Gives you major expedition, but then Blood Mist damages enemies around you and heals for the damage caused. Bat Swarm is gone from the game, but this was moved to the Blood Scion Ultimate. Now, in terms of the new skills, Eviscerate. This is a direct damage melee attack. It deals more damage based on your own missing health. So the lower health, the more damage you do. The 2 morphs are Blood for Blood, costs health to use and increases the damage bonus based on your missing health. And then Arterial Burst will always be a critical strike if you use it under half health. Then the next new skill, Blood Frenzy. It's a permanent buff that is also a toggle. While it's toggled, you gain a massive bonus to weapon and spell damage, but your health is drained for every second and you cannot be healed by other players. Now the morphs, Simmering Frenzy, increase the weapon and spell damage, but also increase the health cost. Sated Fury, when it's off, you heal for a portion of the health you spent while it was toggled on. Vampiric Drain, this is a channeled beam attack, deals low damage to an enemy but heals you for a significant amount of your missing health over time. Brain Vigor restores a portion of your missing stamina over the channel. That's interesting. I believe this was Magicka initially. Now it's a stamina restore, okay. And then Exhilarating Drain, this generates ultimate over the channel time, okay. Mesmerize, this is a new stun ability. It's a crowd control that affects all enemies in a cone in front of you, stunning them if you're facing that direction. Hypnosis, the first morph, this affects all enemies around you, so it's a circular AoE stun. And Stupefy, enemies are snared after the stun ends. Blood Scion, the new ultimate transformation, turns you into the Vampire Lord, essentially. Instantly heals you to full health. You also have increased health, stamina, and magicka. So again, this doesn't say what the values are. My hope is that the PTS will be up soon and I can get that information for you guys. But the two morphs, Swarming Scion, so this is what happened to Bat Swarm. Now you have bats swarming around you, dealing damage. And then Perfect Scion, you ascend to Vampire Stage 5, which grants you all the benefits of Stage 4, but with none of the drawbacks. Very cool. There are new passives as well. Savage Feeding, Supernatural, Recovery, and Blood Ritual. These were all adjusted. Undeath is still there. Now reduces your damage taken by up to 30%. Unnatural Resistance, this was removed. Darkstalker. This decreases the time to enter crouch by 50% instead of only at night, which is what it was previously. Feed, this is obviously your feeding vampire skill. Then our new passive, Strike from the Shadows. It grants a short bonus to weapon and spell damage after leaving Sneak, Invisibility, or Mist form. And then Unnatural Movement. This new skill reduces the cost of sprint and causes you to become invisible after continuously sprinting. This is a very interesting passive. Again, they don't confirm the time that it takes to enter invisibility. I'm sure that's done on purpose. Last that I checked, it was about 3 seconds. So again, I'm not sure exactly what the time duration is there. I'm going to jump on PTS here soon and I'll have a separate video for that. So keep an eye out for that as well. Now, just quickly, there are fixes for performance issues, apparently. Server optimization and stability, having to do with non-combat pets. Those have now been rewritten to put less strain on the server. There's also been a few optimizations to the game client, having to do with multi-threading. So basically how characters are drawn on your client, spreading out the work in order to improve overall performance. So we'll see. As you know, this is the PTS. There's not generally a lot of people on the PTS where we can really test this to see how effective it is. But hopefully that we do see some improvements there. So in terms of class balance changes, we're not going to see a lot here. Mostly bug fixes. So for example, on the Necromancer, tether abilities, these are now once again on the global cooldown. So meaning you can only basically cast those every 1 second. There has been some targeting improvements here apparently. Bone Goliath got a heal fix, and then Grave Grasp, this got a fix as well. For our other classes, Dragon Knight, for example, Empowering Change, this ability now only grants 1 stack of Empower rather than 2. For the Nightblade class, we fixed some issues with Siphoning Strikes, as well as the Soul Shred synergy. On Sorcerer, there's just a fix on Defensive Rune, fix the issue where this ability's stun could ignore line of sight or range. Then under Stormcalling Overload, fixed some visual issues with this ultimate and its morphs. Under Templar fixes, Sunfire, fix an issue where this ability could not be used against neutral targets. And then Rite of Passage, fix an issue where this ability could not be block canceled after beginning. Warden class, Feral Guardian, fix an issue where the summon could not be interrupted. Savage Beast, fix an issue with this passive. Scorch, fix an issue where the ability was not recognized as direct damage. Then under weapon skill lines, Restoration Staff, heavy attacks. Update the heavy attack for this weapon to more closely match Lightning Staff. It will now have 2 minor ticks of damage and then a final larger hit of damage at the end. rather than 3 continuous ticks of damage. Now, let's talk about werewolves. I'm sure many of you have been looking forward to these changes as well. So they say the werewolf experience received many minor updates, focusing on enhancing its existing gameplay based on aggressive and fast-paced play styles, as well as introducing more aspects related to the pack leader. Okay, let's see what it means. Call the pack. This passive now works with Direwolf summoned from pack leader. Hircing's Bounty. Casting this ability while at full health now restores stamina. While this ability or its morphs are slotted, you passively gain Major Brutality. For the morphs here, Hircing's Rage. Casting this ability at full health now grants Major Berserk for 6 seconds, but also causes you to take additional damage. They don't say how much damage, but Major Berserk on demand for 6 seconds, that's really strong. That's a good buff. The other morph, Hircing's Fortitude, this ability now also increases your health and stamina recovery by a small % of the healing caused with a cap, as well as continuing to increase the base healing of the ability. Okay. Again, notice how they're not including any numbers here as far as percentages or times of, how long these buffs last, which I think is interesting, probably done on purpose. Again, my goal is just to get on PTS as soon as I'm done with this video and show you guys exactly how this works. So Piercing Howl got an update as well. This ability and its morphs now deals 10% more damage to enemies who are facing you. And then Howl of Agony morph decreased the damage of this morph to 25%, down from 33%, but it now also works on enemies who are facing you. So as long as they are feared, you'll get that bonus damage, apparently, which is good. Pounce. This got a pretty significant change, I think. This now has a second function. It becomes Carnage for 5 seconds after casting it, which allows you to quickly rend your target, causing them to bleed for 10 seconds with an execute scaling bonus. So basically, cast it again within 5 seconds, and you've hit your enemy with a bleed that also does execute damage, which sounds pretty awesome. So Brutal Pounce morph, Carnage now overrides to Brutal Carnage, converting into a conal attack. Okay, so apparently this morph is no longer a gap closer, but now it's a conal attack. Each time an enemy is hit, you gain extra weapon damage up to a maximum of 6 times. How much extra weapon damage? We don't know. Feral Pounce, dealing damage with the initial hit, or with the override, grants stamina in addition to extending the time you stay in werewolf form. Roar, so this is our fear ability. This ability now also causes enemies to become off balance for 7 seconds. While slotted, you also grant Major Savagery. I love this. So you get that extra 10% weapon critical for free as a werewolf, which is awesome. Deafening Roar, this morph now also applies Minor Maim. Okay, Minor Maim for its duration. Ferocious morph. This morph now increases your heavy attack speed by 33%. And then Pack Leader, the Pack Leader Ultimate morph. This no longer causes your direwolves to apply Minor Maim. Instead, while you are transformed, you gain 10% damage mitigation, and you passively grant you and 11 other allies the Minor Courage buff. So that increases weapon and spell damage. That's really cool. I like this. So more of a group play morph option for werewolves, it seems like. So cool. I like it. Again, minor fixes to the guild skill lines. Nothing major here at all. Under PvP, Alliance War, Barrier did get a cost increase up to 250 from 200. And then just some tweaks to the CP system. Nothing major here at all. Of course, if you want to do a unarmed build, that's now supported with champion points. So there you go. Unarmed builds confirmed. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this video. Remember, this is going to be part 1 of my coverage of the PTS patch notes for Greymoor. Stay tuned for part 2, where I'll be talking in detail about the item set changes to existing items. We're talking about all the monster set changes, changes to the VMA, as well as the Dragonstar Arena weapons, and a lot more. So keep an eye out for that. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on so you don't miss anything. Of course, don't forget to crush that like button. It really does help me out. And until then, I will see you guys around in the next video.